Curry just offloaded his 17,000 square foot Atherton estate for $29.1 million. Almost immediately, the sports media machine began churning out columns dissecting the real estate market, searching for a sign that the greatest shooter in basketball history wants out of the Bay Area. Here is the reality. A house sale is just a wealthy man reallocating his portfolio. If you want the actual indicator of where this franchise is heading, ignore the property records and open the collective bargaining agreement. Golden State is trapped. Not by loyalty, not by sentiment, but by a bloated balance sheet that forces them to rely on rapidly depreciating physical assets. The front office has finalized their 15-man roster for the 2026 to 2027 season. They finished 10th in the Western Conference last year, with a 37-45 record. The objective of the summer was to recalibrate, to acquire a secondary star, and to maximize whatever contention windows Curry has left. Instead, the market froze them out. They stood virtually still, watching the rest of the league load up, while they waited for a miracle that never arrived. They are fielding a core where Curry is 38, Jimmy Butler is 37, Draymond Green is 36, and Al Horford is 40. This is not a roster built for the modern, 82-game marathon. It is a calculated gamble on physical durability that they already lost once. How exactly do you price the risk of an aging superstar? Golden State has allocated roughly $63 million to Curry this season. From a pure offensive standpoint, the yield is still elite. He carried a 30% usage rate last year, knocked down over 4 threes a game, and remains the undisputed focal point of opposing defenses. But he played 43 games. When you are paying maximum veteran money to a 38-year-old guard, you are no longer paying for an 82-game marathon. You are paying for a 60-game sprint and hoping those available nights align with crucial conference matchups. The exposure compounds aggressively when you look at the secondary investment. The front office committed about $57 million to Jimmy Butler this season. This is part of a massive 2-year, $111 million maximum extension signed in February, right after he tore his ACL in January. They locked in over $100 million for a player facing a 9 to 12-month recovery window. When Butler was active last year, the Warriors looked the part. They were 25-19. When his knee gave out, the structural integrity of the team dissolved. They went 12-26 the rest of the way. The math is merciless. When the asset is active, the infrastructure functions. When the asset is sidelined, the entire system collapses. Add Kristaps Porzingis to the ledger for another $20 million. He made a grand total of 32 appearances last year, with only 15 coming in a Golden State uniform. You have roughly $140 million tied up in 3 players who missed massive portions of the season. I have watched this exact movie before. The Brooklyn Nets tried this a decade ago, paying a premium for aging stars and hoping health would miraculously align for the postseason. It ended in a liquidation sale. I will stake my read on this right now. You cannot build a sustainable regular season model when over half your cap space is sitting on the trainer's table. What happens when a top-heavy roster breaks down? A functional organization relies on its depth, but the new collective bargaining agreement does not allow teams like Golden State to purchase premium insurance. The first apron is mathematically locked for the season at $209 million, $15,000. The Warriors currently sit at roughly $216 million in active cap allocations. They are operating in the restricted zone, nearly $7 million over the first apron threshold. Because they are strangled by these restrictions, their off-season maneuverability was effectively neutralized. Their additions were limited to the clearance aisle. They signed George Niang to an almost $4 million deal and Brandon Williams for just under $3 million. On paper, Niang is a career 40% shooter from deep who provides the exact perimeter spacing Steve Kerr's system demands. In reality, he is damaged goods. Niang missed the entire 2025 to 2026 season with a 4th metatarsal stress reaction in his left foot. Orthopedic surgeons have publicly issued warnings about this specific injury. If a stress reaction is not managed with extreme caution, it leads to a full structural fracture. Golden State is not acquiring Niang because he is the missing championship piece. They are acquiring him because he is the only piece they can legally afford to roster. These are mandatory compliance signings, not strategic upgrades. When your primary stars inevitably require load management, you are asking minimum contract players with severe injury histories to carry the weight of a Western Conference playoff race. If the veteran core is fragile and the free agent margins are restricted by the apron, the only remaining leverage a franchise has is youth. This brings us to the operational contradiction of Yaxel Lendeborg. Selected 11th overall, Lendeborg enters the league at 23 years old, acting as one of the oldest and most polished prospects in the first round. He was a consensus first-team All-American at Michigan. He didn't just win a national title, he was the Midwest Region MVP and hit a game-winning three in the Big Ten Tournament semifinals with less than a second left. He dominated the Summer League, securing the MVP award while averaging roughly 15 points and 7 rebounds. The production is undeniable. His cap hit this year is just over $6 million. Over a 4-year rookie-scale contract, he represents a total financial commitment of roughly $28 million. In a vacuum, he is a highly productive, cost-controlled asset ready to contribute. But the Warriors do not exist in a vacuum. They are attempting to execute two mutually exclusive timelines on the same court. You have a 23-year-old rookie who, despite his college pedigree, requires developmental minutes and the freedom to make professional mistakes. On the exact same roster, you have a 38-year-old franchise icon in Curry and a 40-year-old veteran in Al Horford, who need immediate, flawless execution to keep a rapidly closing window propped open. You will hear analysts suggest that Lendeborg, alongside Brandon Podziemski and Moses Moody, can bridge the gap between the present and the future. That is a comforting narrative for local broadcasters. But blending a rookie's learning curve with a contention mandate is a myth. Every tactical mistake a young player makes costs you a possession. Every lost possession costs you a game in the standings. You cannot rebuild your foundation while simultaneously trying to patch the roof. Let's address the strongest counterargument. The optimists look at this roster and point to a theoretical best-case scenario of 48 wins. The logic dictates that if Curry stays near his 26-point average, if Butler returns from ACL surgery by January without losing a step, and if Porzingis magically logs 60 games, they are a dangerous playoff matchup. That is not a basketball strategy. That is a parlay. You are betting on a 37-year-old wing to seamlessly integrate mid-season after a catastrophic knee injury. You are betting on a 38-year-old point guard to shoulder a heavy usage rate without breaking down. You are betting on a 36-year-old Draymond Green to anchor a defense alongside a 40-year-old center. You will say Jimmy Butler has not had any setbacks in his recovery process and could return sooner than expected. That is fine for ticket sales. It does not change the reality of the Western Conference standings in December. The West is not waiting for Golden State's physical therapy schedule to clear up. San Antonio just won 62 games and reached the finals with a 22-year-old Victor Wembanyama. Oklahoma City is marching out a back-to-back MVP in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Minnesota is actively stronger. The margin for error in this conference is zero. Even playing average basketball for 2 months can leave a team buried in 12th place, precisely where the worst-case scenario models project the Warriors if their health falters. My verdict? The Golden State Warriors are not a championship contender. They are a legacy act relying entirely on positive variance. For this to work, a 38-year-old Curry must defy physiological decline. A 37-year-old Butler must return from an ACL reconstruction ahead of schedule and immediately regain his lateral quickness. A historically fragile center must stay on the floor, and a rookie must play like a 5-year veteran. If even one of those variables fails, the entire structure crumbles. They are priced out of a pivot, and the consequences of their balance sheet have finally arrived. Steph Curry selling his house is not a signal that he is leaving. But looking at this roster, it absolutely should be. Vote A. This roster has enough veteran tactical experience to secure a playoff seed if they manage their health. Or B. The cap sheet is too heavy and the injuries are too inevitable, making them a lottery team by March. Drop your letter in the pinned comment, and I'll pin the sharpest argument before the next video.